In the year 1654, a handful of families, weary of the crowded coast and the ever-watchful eyes of their neighbors, gathered their few belongings and set out into the unknown. They were driven by more than just the promise of land. They sought a place where their secrets could be buried, far from the reach of judgment and rumor. The journey was long and perilous, the forest thick and unwelcoming, but hope pressed them onward. Eventually, they stumbled upon a shadowed valley, its heart cut by a slow black river that seemed to absorb all light. The banks were crowded with ancient weeping willows, their branches trailing in the water like fingers searching for something lost. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and secrets. They named their new home Blackwillow Reach. To them, it was a sanctuary, a place to begin again, to build lives unburdened by the past. They raised cabins at the forest's edge, planted fields, and tried to carve order from the wild. But the valley was not empty. Something ancient and patient already waited there, hidden in the shadows beneath the trees. It watched as the settlers built their lives, silent and unseen, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Within a year, the settlement was abandoned. The cabins stood empty, their doors swinging in the wind, the fields overgrown and silent. There was no sign of violence, no evidence of disaster, just a haunting stillness. Meals sat uneaten on tables, tools lay scattered in the fields, as if the people had simply vanished in the middle of their daily lives. The people were simply gone. No footprints led away from the settlement, no messages were left behind. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole, leaving only questions in their wake. The silence that followed was heavier than stone, pressing down on the land, and all who dared to visit. Even the birds seemed to avoid the place, and the wind carried only whispers. Centuries have passed, but the mystery of Blackwillow Reach endures. The forest has reclaimed much of what was built, but the story lingers, growing stranger with each retelling. Archaeologists have searched the site, finding only the most ordinary objects, broken pottery, rusted tools, scattered toys. There are no graves, no signs of struggle, no clues to explain the disappearance. Official reports end in question marks, the records growing fainter with time. But among the locals, legends have taken root, stories whispered by firelight, of shadows that move on their own, and voices that call out from the trees. Some say the land itself took the settlers, that Blackwillow Reach is a place where the earth remembers every secret ever buried within it. On certain nights, when the wind is just right, people claim you can still hear voices in the trees, soft, pleading, and lost. The willows seem to whisper, their branches brushing together like hands in prayer. Today, the site is overgrown, the forest slowly swallowing what remains of the settlement. Nature has reclaimed the land, but the sense of unease lingers. Visitors speak of a cold, watchful presence that seems to follow them, and of dreams haunted by pale faces peering from the darkness. Some leave offerings at the edge of the woods, hoping to appease whatever still lingers there. The settlement is gone, its people lost to time, but the haunting of Blackwillow Reach remains. A silent warning whispered by the willows to all who dare to listen. The founders of Blackwillow Reach were not heroes, at least not in the way legends are usually told. They were men and women marked by desperation, driven by the weight of their own mistakes and the shadows of their pasts. They were fugitives from their own pasts, each carrying burdens too heavy to leave behind. Their eyes, always searching the horizon, betrayed the fear that what they ran from might one day catch up. The Millers, for instance, fled under the cover of darkness after a suspicious fire consumed their home. Whispers followed them, rumors of guilt and secrets best left unspoken. Thomas, the blacksmith, was a man hollowed by grief, his hands once strong now trembling with loss. He sought solace in the clang of metal but found only echoes of what he'd lost. Margaret Crow, accused of witchcraft by those she once called neighbors, wandered the woods with fear as her constant companion. She hoped the wild would offer her the safety that civilization had denied. Each family carried secrets, hoping the vastness of the wilderness would erase them. The journey was grueling, mud, hunger, and exhaustion wore at their bodies and spirits. Yet, with every step, they clung to the fragile hope that a new beginning was possible. When they finally reached the valley, it seemed a gift from fate itself. Fertile land, a river brimming with life, and the promise of a future untainted by their histories. For a moment, hope blossomed. They built cabins from sturdy logs, planted seeds in the rich earth, and dared to believe that they could start anew. Laughter returned, if only briefly, as they worked side by side to raise their homes from the ground. But the silence of the forest was deep and unyielding. At night, when the wind whispered through the trees, old memories crept in. The wilderness, instead of erasing their regrets, seemed to magnify them. Isolation, once a blessing, slowly turned into a curse. The distance from their old lives only made their loneliness more profound. The ghosts they tried to escape, regrets, guilt, and sorrow, followed them into the woods, growing stronger in the quiet. In the hush of dusk, it was easy to imagine unseen eyes watching from the shadows. In Blackwillow Reach, their paths had more room to haunt them. The land was wild, but their memories were wilder still, refusing to be tamed. They had not escaped. Instead, they had brought their ghosts to a place where there was nowhere left to hide, and the silence of the forest became the echo of everything they wished to forget. From the start, the land felt wrong. The willows twisted unnaturally, their branches clawing at the earth. Fires burned weak and cold, casting more shadow than light. Nights were darker, the chill deeper than mere weather. Animals sensed it too. Dogs cowered, cats hissed at empty corners, livestock cried out in distress. The settlers felt watched, a prickling on the neck, eyes in the trees. Children stopped playing, women hurried indoors, all unsettled by the silent woods. At night, the wind through the willows sounded less like wind, more like a mournful breath. The land was not welcoming, it was warning them. The settlers tried to ignore it, but dread seeped in. The peace shattered one summer afternoon. Alara, a bright-eyed girl, vanished while playing near the woods. Panic swept the settlement, lanterns lit, voices called, but the forest swallowed all sound. No tracks, no sign. She was simply gone. Days of searching brought only scratches and despair. The woods felt alive, hiding her on purpose. Birds fell silent, crows watched from bare branches. Hope died, replaced by fear. Parents clung to children, forbidding them from straying. The forest became a predator, not a resource. Alara's disappearance was a wound that would not heal. The settlers had fled old dangers, only to find a new, incomprehensible one. The woods were now a tomb. After Alara vanished, the forest began to whisper. It was as if the very air had changed, thick with secrets and sorrow. The wind carried voices that seemed to slip between the branches, curling around the trunks and echoing through the undergrowth. At first, it was only a faint murmur, easy to dismiss as the sighing of the trees or the distant call of an owl. But soon, the whispers grew bolder, impossible to ignore. Settlers heard voices, familiar, beloved, impossible, calling from the trees. Some heard the laughter of lost children, others the gentle admonishments of mothers long gone. The voices seemed to know just what to say to draw each listener closer, promising comfort, forgiveness, or reunion. Thomas, the blacksmith, heard his dead wife's voice at the forge, pleading for him to come. Her words were soft, trembling with longing, and he found himself reaching for the door before he realized what he was doing. Each night her voice returned, more insistent, more desperate, until Thomas could barely sleep for fear of what he might do. Father Michael found strange symbols carved into trees near the church, ancient, powerful, and growing closer each day. The markings pulsed with a quiet menace, as if the forest itself was drawing a boundary, encroaching on sacred ground. He tried to decipher their meaning, but the symbols seemed to shift and change when he looked away. The community frayed. Some had to be restrained from walking into the woods, lured by the voices. It took several strong arms to hold back those who wept and begged to be released, convinced that salvation or lost loved ones waited just beyond the tree line. Others disappeared, leaving no trace. Paths that once led to neighbors' homes now vanished into tangled undergrowth, and the names of the missing were whispered with dread. The land was using their memories against them. Every cherished moment, every regret, became a weapon wielded by the wind, turning longing into torment. The priest called it a devil's trick, but comfort was hollow. His prayers seemed to vanish into the darkness, swallowed by the same wind that carried the voices. The voices grew persistent, sweet and cruel. They promised peace, but delivered only confusion and pain, weaving dreams and nightmares together until no one could tell them apart. The settlers were no longer just afraid of the woods, they feared their own memories. Each recollection became suspect, each emotion a potential snare. The forest was no longer just a place, it was a presence, alive and hungry. The haunting was personal now. It crept into their homes, their dreams, their hearts, leaving them isolated even among friends. The line between grief and madness blurred. Blackwillow Reach was unraveling, its people caught between the world they knew and the one the forest whispered into being. The settlers never knew the valley's true nature. For generations, it was sacred ground, a library of souls for the native peoples. Here, memories were anchored with rituals, songs, and symbols carved into trees. The land was saturated with spiritual energy, a thin veil between worlds. It was meant for remembrance, not for living. The settlers' grief stirred the echoes, unlocking memories not their own. The land reflected their pain, not out of malice, but confusion. The haunting was the land's attempt to communicate, a mirror of sorrow. By building homes, the settlers broke an ancient seal. Sacred trees, carved with ritual symbols, were cut down, pillars of a spiritual boundary destroyed, the balance shattered, memories became restless, untethered, and dangerous. Ilara's disappearance was the first sign. She was absorbed by the land's unsealed energy. The priest saw new symbols appear, the land's desperate attempt to repair itself. The settlers' presence was a wound, and the land tried to close it. Their ignorance unleashed a spiritual storm. The land was not attacking, it was reacting, growing more desperate as the seal weakened. Winter came early, trapping the settlers in cold and hunger. Fear and suspicion poisoned the community. Hope was dead. Margaret Crow found a cache of ancient stones carved with warning symbols, hidden beneath her hearth. She understood. The land was not meant for them. She tried to warn the others, but desperation made them blind. They accused her of witchcraft, repeating the old fears she had fled. Her warning was dismissed, her discovery twisted into a threat. The community turned on itself, lost to fear. The land's message was clear, but no one listened. The last chance for escape was lost. Rejecting Margaret's warning sealed their fate. The land began returning lost objects, childhood knives, blue ribbons, making the past physically real. Some settlers tried to communicate with the land, carving their names into the earth, hoping for reunion or escape. Others simply surrendered, walking calmly into the woods, never to return. The settlement emptied, not by violence but by a quiet, deliberate vanishing. The last message scratched into a table read, "We are still here, because it remembers us." When hunters found the empty cabins, only silence and mystery remained. The people had not left. They had been absorbed, becoming whispers in a land of echoes. Blackwillow Reach endures as a chilling testament to a place that does not forget. The haunting remains, a story whispered by the willows.